Hey, everybody. Welcome to a brand new music podcast called Buffalo Music Mafia. We're from Buffalo, New York. My name is Thomas Orwat Jr., and I run glammetal.com and also run rockmusicstar.com. And my co partner over here, Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Joseph Suto. I run rockshowcritique.com, and I also at one time also worked with Thomas on his site, rockmusicstar.com. And between us, we've done a lot of stuff over the years in the music business here in Western New York. I also ran buffalorocks.com, which was prominent in the early 2000s. And Tom is going to tell you about what our plan is here going forward.
Yes, our mission statement here at Buffalo Music Mafia is to have a show and just talk about, events that happen not only in Buffalo, New York and the Western New York area, but just music topics in general. It seems like everybody has their Zoom podcast. So, we have our other ones, but we also thought we'd get together and just have, get together, maybe get some guests and talk about some very cool topics. What we're going to do here is this is our very first episode, and it's going to be pretty. We're going to keep it pretty basic. Joe actually came up with this great idea, and he thought that we should go back and talk about our personal five favorite concerts from the 1980s. So I thought that was a great topic. I did see a few concerts in the 70s, but the 80s for me personally was a great time for concerts. I probably saw like the greatest concerts of my entire life in those 10 years. And it was really extremely difficult to come up with five. Joe, what do you think about the concerts that you saw in the 80s?
Well, I think that was basically, it seemed like every band was always trying to outdo everybody else. They were always trying to top everybody out with stage shows, production, uh, so much props, stage props, and light shows. And it was just phenomenal time, in this day and age back then, where, because, they took a growing leap of bounds from the 70s to the 80s, and then basically late 80s into the 90s. Pretty much you saw a lot more technology, better sound. The sound seemed to get better over the years, and now obviously they really got the sounds dialed in the newer concerts, the more recent shows. But
Yeah, some of the songs are so good you could swear you're listening to the CD. Not that any of our bands would be playing to like pre-recorded tracks or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm sure that that would never happen to any of my favorite bands.
yeah, but if you go back and listen to a lot of these shows back in the day, a lot of the buildings back in the day weren't actually built for concerts or as a concert hall or sound. Like the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium is a classic example. Um, it was an old building that just kept on getting remodeled. And yeah, I remember going to many shows there in the mid '80s with no air conditioning before they finally put it in. And there were some sweltering shows in
It
that
was
venue.
it was it was very late in the 80s because I remember seeing a Judas Priest concert in 1988, and I was backstage at that, and Rob Halford was complaining that there was like no air conditioning in the place, and it was in the middle of summer. It was Judas Priest and Cinderella in like the end of July or early August, and it must have been like 110 in that place. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it used to be like super hot. I mean, but sometimes that made the concert kind of cool. I mean, gave it a unique. I mean, if you liked being warm, I mean, I didn't mind it, but like the people I went with hated that show because of the fact that it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I came up with the idea. Let's just pick what shows you think are the best five that you've seen during the '80s. For me, I'm actually going to go in order. I don't know if you were going chronological or you were going in order, or how you would do
Well,
it.
yeah, I don't know about like I'm gonna try to go in order. My number one is my number one.
Yeah, it's true. You could flip some of these around, but at least as I wrote them down and went through them, this is how I did it. And I'm gonna start mine off with the fifth favorite concert down to my favorite. That way, it kind of builds up the suspense here.
All
So
right, well, sure. Well, why don't you go first, Joe? What was number five for you of the 1980 concerts that you went to?
well, this was one that was actually my first concert that was ever in the round that I ever saw, like in a regular, like this was at the Memorial Auditorium in Buffalo. Wednesday, February 3rd, 1988. Def Leppard and Tesla. That was the double bill. His Def Leppard their famous Hysteria tour. They performed it in the round. They had the stage set up right in the middle of the arena, and it's not. It wasn't easy for the bands to pull that show off because you have to worry about playing to everybody all around you instead of just straight on like you normally would.
Sure, yeah.
And I thought Tesla did a phenomenal job considering they didn't have a lot of room to work with as opposed because there was a lot of equipment in the way with Def Leppard stuff and gear and stuff, but they definitely pulled it off. It was Tesla came out rocking right off the bat, coming at you live. Played at that time they are doing it was only the one they only had the one album out, Mechanical Resonance, so that's what they were playing pretty much most of that album in their short, I think it was about 45 minutes. Def Leppard came out, and then obviously, I think right away, right off the bat, they got everybody's attention because they ripped it open with Stage Fright and Rock Till You Drop, which was phenomenal because they still had managed to put this big curtain up all around, and then the curtain just flew down, and then they just came out and rocked it. Um, they played, at that point, Hysteria, they played about 15 songs. Hysteria, they didn't play a lot of that album, even though that was the tour, because obviously the album had just come out. So I know, like on a later tour dates, they added more of the album in. So, but they played a good portion of the album, and mixing in stuff like Rock of Ages, Photograph, and that kind of. Let It Go was in there. So that was a great tour for them.
Hmm.
So that show, even though it didn't have a lot of the different the stage setup, they couldn't really do a lot being in the round, but it was just unique in that setting, and that's what stuck out for me.
Very cool. I'm assuming that show was sold out.
I would think so.
Yeah. All right, my number five show, I picked the Scorpions and Bon Jovi, which was June 2nd, 1984, at the Odd, middle of summer show, super hot, pure power. The Scorpions, who were like, this was their first time that they were headlining arenas in America. Fresh off the Love at First Sting record, great record, Rock You Like a Hurricane, all those great songs, so singles that you know. And interestingly enough, Bon Jovi was the opening act. Well, Bon Jovi was on their very first record, had previously played a club in Buffalo to about 25 people, like about 3 months prior to that. And and I was there for that, and that was like a super cool show. I was underage, but just loving that, and then seeing him in an actual arena, and just like you knew that he was going to be a star. The Scorpions were on top of their game, just 100% energy, great set list, just a really great show. And out of the many that I saw in the 1980s, that was definitely a standout.
Yeah, I wish I
Number
would have seen
four,
that one. I never
yeah, that
never.
was great. That was a great show. What do you got for number four, Joe?
All right, gonna go back to October 17th, 1987. Um, the Permanent Vacation Tour touched down in the auditorium. Aerosmith and Dokken. Aerosmith, that's my second time seeing them, but the first time as in an arena. I saw them earlier in a stadium show where they weren't even the headliner, but this time it was their show, and it was everything I expected it to be. They played, a great set list, mixed in. Stuff they haven't actually played probably since this tour almost,
Well,
at least on a regular basis. The Coney Island Whitefish Boy off of the Night in the Ruts album, which never really got a set list time in itself, but they played it for the early portion of the Permanent Vacation Tour. Lightning Strikes, which Joe Perry, even though he never played on the original version, he always thought that was a cool song, so he was excited to get to play that in concert with
wow,
Aerosmith. So they haven't really played it too many times since that tour, except on off dates here and there.
yeah,
Girl Keeps Coming Apart, a real rare song off of the Permanent Vacation album. Matter of fact, they only played it live like 4 times and off it went, something like that. Never to be played again. And Dokken, obviously, that was the first time I saw an opening act that actually got an encore, believe it or not. Dokken, uh, their new album wasn't out yet, but they played a few songs off their upcoming album, Back for the Attack, and they got to encore. Came out with "In My Dreams" for a quick
Wow.
song during their 45-minute set. So yeah, everything you expect it to be. Great show. Both bands played it up real well, and yeah, well, nothing too fancy of a stage show, but it was all for me. It was all about seeing Aerosmith live in Buffalo, and the set list was phenomenal.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. For number four, I'm going to go to a show that was on September 30th, 1986. And it was David Lee Roth playing at the Odd. Cinderella opened. And what made this show so special for me was, of course, I was a big Van Halen fan. And was I upset about the split of David Lee Roth and Van Halen? Yeah, of course I was. But David Lee Roth put together an amazing band, which featured Steve Vai on guitar, Greg Bessonet on drums, and our hometown hero and my favorite rock star at the time, Billy Sheehan on bass. And for everyone, pretty much everyone watching this knows that Billy's from Buffalo. So I was a huge Chalice fan and followed Billy through like the late '70s and went to as many Chalice shows as I could possibly go to. And this was such an amazing event. I mean, I've talked to Billy about it, and he talks about what a great event it was for him personally to headline the arena or headline the Odd, and for the fans like myself, it was great to see him. And again, pure energy. Vi and Sheen just like ruled that night. They opened up with Shy Boy. I mean, it was just like it was such a great show. Cinderella opened. Cinderella opened every single show for a while there in like the mid yeah, from like the first time Night Songs came out to like 1989. I mean, it was almost every show I went to. Cinderella was the opening act. So I mean, there was Cinderella, nothing super special, but man, I'll tell you, man, that was David Lee Roth's finest moment. Um, until we talk about another David Lee Roth moment coming up for me in a little while. But yeah, Billy Sheehan, Steve Vai, David Lee Roth, my God, they kicked ass on that day.
Yeah, I was at that show as well, and yeah, that actually almost made my list. It came close, but yeah, that was a great show. I remember Billy got the key to the city, and matter of fact, I interviewed him one time and he talked about that show, how when he got back to the hotel room, that he was on some magazine cover too, and somebody had stuck it underneath his door at the hotel, and so that it was a big day for him, big time. He still
Yeah,
remembers it really well to this day.
yep, absolutely.
All right, so we're going with my number three, which
Oh, now you had the visuals.
yeah, I just had to get the right one here. But this number three show turned out to be my first real rock show that I ever went to. You wanted the
Oh
best,
yeah.
you got the best. The hottest band in the world, Kiss. That was the first time they ever played Buffalo. It was November 18th, 1984. First time they played Buffalo without makeup. Obviously they had just taken it off the year before, but the Lick It Up tour never touched down here and never came through town. So this was the first time they came to town without the makeup. And you know, what can you say about Kiss putting on a show? They put on a show with makeup, without makeup. It's always they leave you always wanting more. Obviously, the unique part actually of the whole show was the opener. They had a new band called Queensryche from Seattle, and I didn't really know too much about them when I first seen them, but man, when I got done looking at their set, it's like, wow, these guys are going to be huge. And sure enough, what about 3 years later, they're coming back headlining the Odd too.
Yeah.
So I mean, unbelievable how back in the old days these headliners always seem to set things up for these younger bands, and these younger bands, a lot of them were able to just move right into headlining slots themselves. The music and the type of music was just so big at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that show definitely my number three.
Yeah, I was at that show too, and as far as Queensryche goes, that was a good example of a label getting behind a band and actually working a band, and promoting a band and building a band. And you don't see that nowadays. Now it's like, if there's a new band, and it doesn't, if they don't hit right away, that is pretty much done for them. And as far as Kiss goes, I was at, like I said, I was at that show. Very, very surprising that Mark St. John, everyone expected to see him, but he wasn't on stage. It was Bruce Kulick that was actually playing that show. And I did see Mark St. John, who was on like the side of the stage signing autographs to the fans that could like reach over to him. But yeah, it was no, it was Bruce Kulick, and it was kind of shocking because I went to that show completely expecting to see Mark St. John play.
Yeah, yeah. That's weird how things turn out. St. John, I think he only ended up not even playing with them that long. He maybe did a few shows, and
I
that
think
was
it
it.
was 3 shows was
Yeah,
what
something.
it was. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure somebody will correct us on that. I'm sure there's a Kiss fanatic who will, if they happen to watch this, will be yelling at me for not knowing that. Okay, so I'm going to pick my number three show. Uh, I am going to go with a show I saw on January 28th, 1984, which featured a opening band called Wasted, which was a band that Pete Wade from UFO was in. And then after Wasted, there was a upcoming band called Motley Crue, who were playing on Shout at the Devil, a band that was at that time I felt the most dangerous band on the face of the earth. Shout at the Devil is still one of my favorite records of all time. And the headliner was Ozzy Osbourne with Jakey Lee on guitar. And that they had a stage show for that. There was a lot of very good theatrics, pyro, awesome stage show. Probably like one of the best stage shows I actually saw after that point in my concert career. And Ozzy looked great. Had a lot of energy, great set list. Jakey Lee was incredible. I'm not going to say anything like he was, he was, for all the people missing Randy Rhoads, I mean, Jakey Lee, like, stood up to the challenge and did a great job. And so that was number three for me. You
Yeah, I
ready?
didn't get to see that show, but man, I wanted to for sure. And unfortunately, that was one of those a little bit before I was really able to get to go to shows on my own and stuff like that. So
Oh,
I
I
missed out
forgot
on a
that.
lot of.
I was gonna say I forgot to mention that was the very first show they actually went backstage for. Um, I was gonna show my backstage pass and I forgot to bring it, but yeah, um, it was backstage and I didn't meet Ozzy, I didn't meet anyone from Motley Crue, but I met Jakey Lee and I met Bob Daisley, Carmine Appice, who was the drummer. I met the guys from Wasted, talked to Pete Wade for a while. Yeah, so it was really cool.
Yeah, no doubt. You said your first time backstage.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that will always you always remember stuff like that. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I got this backstage pass. One of my relatives worked for Moog, which was based over here in I think East Aurora at the time. And Don Airy, the keyboard player from Ozzy Osbourne, did a lot of had an endorsement with them. So he sent over some tickets to them and backstage passes and I, my relative didn't want to go, so they gave them to me, and I gladly took those and had a great time.
All right.
We were
So
up to
that
number two, right?
oh yeah, we're up to number two. So we're working our way down here. All right. So this number two one for me, um, October 9th, 1988. Um, ACDC and Cinderella. My first time I ever got a chance to see ACDC, and they did not disappoint. This show was just unbelievable. I got a lot of it. Sometimes it depends where you're sitting, does make a difference
Oh,
in
for
how
sure.
you see a show. So let me give you the background real quick. Most of the time in that time era, 1980s, late 80s, whenever tickets went on sale, there was no internet at that time, obviously. So you had to sleep out for tickets to get the good tickets or know somebody. So I had to work, so I couldn't go down to get tickets. So my brother, he went down to like our local A store at 10 o'clock when they went on sale because he'd worked overnight, so he couldn't get there any earlier himself. So he walks in there at 10 o'clock and gets fourth row tickets. Nobody in line. Unbelievable. And any other show, any other year, you'd be like 100th in line waiting for tickets.
Yeah.
So that just, I'm not sure because that tour did pretty well there. I'm not sure why there was nobody there, but that played to our benefit. And like I said, the first time I got to see ACDC, that did not disappoint at all. I mean, fourth row. right in front of Angus Young. Does it get any better than that?
Well, I was first row for that, so not to brag, but
But at
that
that
w
time, that's like the best seats I ever had
yeah,
anytime, you know, because I was young and I didn't know people and have connections or whatever. But yeah, so the thing about I that really stuck, I mean, still looking back today, it's just unbelievable how that stage was. It's like they started playing the music, the lights went dim, started playing the music. All of a sudden, this like missile like rocket or something comes out from underneath the ground on the center of the stage, and then all of a sudden the music kicks into gear and this panel opens up in the rocket, and who comes charging out of there? None other than Angus Young. It was just unbelievable way to start off a show. I mean, you don't see too many things like that. You definitely don't see anything like that anymore. Um, that was definitely something that I'll always remember right there. And at that point, that was a great time to see them because they had a new album out, and that was the Blow Up Your Video album.
right.
It didn't that album had only like 2 tracks the radio really touched, and they only played those 2 songs in concert, so it was a treat because then we were able to get, other songs, and, they went back and played, I think that tour they did a few more Bon Scott songs than they had in other years just because they didn't play a lot of the new album, so we got a lot of really good stage set list there with Who Made Who also. That was right when the Maximum Overdrive soundtrack was out. So that was the first album after that. So they played Who Made Who, which was went over well. And they actually played Jailbreak, which, if you remember, that's a rare track that they finally released. It's a Bon Scott song. They finally
Yeah.
released later on, down the road from when Bond was around. It was like, I think it was the '84 when it finally got released through the proper release there.
At least
But
in
yeah, I
America,
mean,
yeah.
just a phenomenal show. I mean, and I still remember those cannons. Man, those things were so loud, echoing throughout my ear. I don't think I heard a thing for like 4 days after the show. That's how it was. Those back in those days, those shows, if they were loud enough, you definitely felt it down the road. And like I mentioned, Cinderella opened, like Tom said, they're kind of like the Jim Crean band. They always seem to open up every show in Buffalo all the time. So Cinderella actually started that trend back in the day. I think that was they opened for Priest that year, Cinderella, and ACDC. It seemed like, yeah, every time you turn around, Cinderella was opening. But the thing that I didn't mind because Cinderella, they're a great band, and at that point I think this was their first, yeah, this was the first time they came though where they had the new album out, Long Cold Winter. So they actually mixed in songs from there, which they didn't the previous 2 visits. So that's what made this one really good, was because they had some new music, and of course they had, Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, Gypsy Road, just great songs that made their set list even stronger.
Yeah, like I said, I was at that show, and you are right about it being loud. It was the very last concert I went to where I didn't wear earplugs, and I will never go to a concert without earplugs. I mean, I could not. I thought I was had permanent ear damage after that show. I could not hear right for about a week, and I'm not joking around. I mean, it was scary. Being in the front row with ACDC without earplugs was stupid, but I was just a kid. But yeah, I mean, I thought about putting that on my list too, but hey man, I saw AC/DC with Bon Scott, so I mean, every show I've seen with AC/DC since then, I mean, just has never compared to that first show I saw where Bon Scott was the lead vocalist. I mean, nothing against Brian Johnson. I mean, he's a great frontman, but it was magical when Bon was with the band, and I feel sorry for all the AC/DC fans that couldn't witness that like I did. I saw him in '79, but yeah, I mean, just amazing show. Okay, so my number two one is I saw you two play at Shays on May 16th, 1983. For those that remember back then, that show made the news because everybody on the balcony of Shays was like jumping up and down, and it was causing the plaster from the ceiling below to fall on the people on the floor. And there was like actually, they were worried that the balcony was going to collapse and it was going to be like this catastrophe. Luckily for me, I wasn't under the balcony. I was like maybe 12 rows from the stage. But man, that wasn't just a show. That was like an event that I'll never forget. I mean, just Bono and the passion that he sang with, and the energy that the band had, and it was just, I mean, it was just, you walked out of there and like you didn't listen to anything but YouTube for like, a month later. I mean, it was like such a great event. And yeah, that was number two for me. With that, that they were playing on the war tour, and it was like, right before they became an arena band. Ended the show with the song 40, and each member like left their instrument on the stage, and they could hear the echo, and it was so amazing. No special effects needed, just like pure like talent. So that was number two for me. U2 SJ's May 16th.
Nice. All right, my number one basically just stands out for a bunch of different reasons, but give start with the date. It's Friday, July 19th, 1985. So we just graduate high school in the previous June there. So me and my buddies go down there, all big Zeppelin fans. So obviously we're talking Shaken and Stirred tour, Robert
Oh
Plant.
yeah.
Now, obviously that's not the greatest album, but I think over time that album grew on me a lot. I mean, it's one of those. But the cool thing was he didn't play any Led Zeppelin this tour. That was later on down the road. So he for his first two tours, he basically just kept it all of his solo materials, maybe a cover or two. But the cool thing about this one was that the stage, it was unbelievable. I don't know, were you there at all for that
I did
one?
not go to I've never seen Robert Plant perform live. I was waiting to see Led Zeppelin, but that never happened.
Anyhow, the stage was before the show, there was no cover on it, no curtain up. You could just literally see the stage, and it was a weird, it was really a weird, unique stage. It was like a sloping stage. It went downwards and then smoothed out, and definitely, I think that's what made it unique in the fact that it didn't have any covering. You got to see everything right up front, pretty much of what you were going to be looking at. Um, but the thing that show we as soon as the lights go down, he comes on out to none other than "In the Mood," which really set the mood for the night. Nice slow song, and it was what was unbelievable was like the keyboards. They were so forceful. You could actually feel the rumble when when Jez Woodruff was playing the keyboards. It was like unbelievable how you felt everything just because of the vibration. I don't know what that was all about, but it was just you knew you were at that show. That's for sure. My friend, we're hammering down beers in the parking lot before the show, so he had just gone to the bathroom before the Plant came out, but he's such a big Plant fan that he couldn't even get through the first 30 seconds of the song. He was just had to run to the bathroom right in the
Oh
middle
wow.
of it after, what's the chances of missing your favorite performer playing probably his favorite song, having to leave in the middle of it to go to the bathroom like that when, it's just crazy. But it was a great performance. He played a lot of songs from the first two albums, mixed in a few from Shaken and Stirred, Pink and Black, Little by Little, which was the main radio hit that you usually heard off of that tour. And then also the cool part was later on in the show, he did like a little Honey Drippers segment because the Honey Drippers, if you remember, Robert Plant was that was his project, and he did a little segment where he did a few songs from there. Um, Pretty much that's how his show ended, and then he came back out and did two double encore of Like I've Never Been Gone and Big Log. And the one thing I take away from that is Big Log. I've never seen, you're familiar with the song Big Long. There's a lot of clapping in it and everything. And the unbelievable thing is that during that whole 6 minute song, whatever, the audience kept up clapping throughout the whole thing. They didn't fade away or anything. They just kept the rhythm throughout the whole song, and it just it's just a great show. I would love to see that show again. Um, you just that's why you have the memories though, because you can't, back then a lot of these bands didn't film a lot of their shows, so you
Right.
don't
Yeah.
really have a lot of documentation, of these tours, which really, I wish these bands, at least some of them were smart, like Kiss. They usually filmed at least a couple shows every tour, and then obviously they released it. They came out with their old Kissology thing. But
Yeah.
a lot of these other bands, unfortunately, never really did a lot to it, because then it just you just all we have now is these memories.
Right. And my biggest memory of the '80s is a concert that changed my life, and like probably for the worse, to be quite honest for you, to you, because this was one decadent, like nasty band that was like ruling the world, and it was the coolest band in the world to like, and everybody liked them. Everyone in high school liked them. The guys wanted to be them. The girls wanted to be with them. And I'm talking about Van Halen, 1980, Women and Children First. This is the tour program. I mean, just looking at the tour program, I mean, it's like it makes me want to like, you know, drink Jack Daniels. I mean, this was such an amazing show. A very short show, only like maybe like 70 minutes, sloppy as all hell, but one hell of a party. It was just amazing. Eddie Van Halen just on fire, just absolutely great. David Lee Roth, the ultimate frontman of all time. You know, did Ice Cream Man, and then for an encore came out in a Buffalo Sabres jersey, and the crowd went crazy. It was right during that time. We were right in the middle of the playoffs with the New York Islanders, and unfortunately we did not win that series. But at that point we thought we could, and it just like fired up the crowd even more. And the whole the whole David Lee Roth whole stick, oh, I forgot the lyrics and all that stuff. You're hearing it for the first time. You think he really is forgetting the lyrics, and not like, that there was a planned thing that he would do every single show for the next like 3 decades. But it was magical. Like I said, musically and the audio was like super loud, and it was like, I got a terrible review the next day. The review, I think the headline was 11,000 adolescents scream for Van Halen, but why? Or something like that. It was, the critics didn't get them, but the young people, the fans like myself, friggin' loved it. And I've seen Van Halen every single time since they've been to Buffalo, and nothing that's come close to topping that show. I mean, the David Lee Roth Billy Shane show came close, but this one was my number one show of the 1980s, and it was right in 1982, so it had a lot of competition, and it won. And I'll tell you, man, that was again one of those times where like for like a month later, all you did was like listen to Van Halen and drink beer and smoke cigarettes and do all the naughty things you weren't supposed to do when you're like 15 years old. So that's it. Those were the top five of the 80s. Thank you everybody for listening. Joe, you want to add anything else before we leave this our first episode?
No, just that, we're planning on doing a lot of different unique things that you don't always, see. And like Tom said, try to comment, put, if you guys went to any shows during the 80s, put down what you felt, and what you liked the best, and I think whenever we're like doing lists or picking up stuff, it's your always your opinion. Your opinion to you matters. So there's no wrong answers, just let people know. Sometimes people help other people turn them on to other music too, which
Yeah.
maybe you might not have ever thought of listening to a certain band, and somebody brought them up, and you go, well, maybe I'll give them a listen. And all of a sudden, you might become a fan of that band. It's weird how music works. Sometimes word of mouth was always a big thing back in the
Yeah, word
day.
of mouth, and now it's like right on your phone, right here. You can listen to pretty much any song that was ever recorded. So it's a good time to like especially during this pandemic time. I've been going back and like listening to stuff that I never listened to back then, and rediscovering music from the 80s and 70s, and I'm having a great time doing that. So, well, that's all we have for you. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.
See ya.